Hello, everyone. I've got a special guest today, a good friend of mine. He's sat at the moment in his lovely place in San Francisco, across the Atlantic. Matthew Dixon from Purple Patch Fitness. So Matt and I have been orbiting around the same parts of endurance sport for probably not far for a couple of decades now, but we only really connected in recent years through a mutual friend, Paul Newsome at Swim Smooth. And we met up in San Francisco, had a beer together, hit it off and started talking about performance and training. And I love to pick in Matt's brains because Matt is considered to be, one of the oracles of triathlon and endurance coaching. And since then, we've started doing more and more work together. Matt's asked Precision Hydration to work with a number of his professional triathletes, which we've started to do. And then more recently, Precision Hydration have become quite heavily involved with the Purple Patch Performance Centre, which is due to open in San Francisco quite soon. And the other day, Matt recorded a fantastic little piece for us for our newsletter. And I'd encourage you to go back to YouTube and check that out if you've not seen it yet. It was all about something which he calls the Sunday Special. And the Sunday Special is a method or a sort of methodology that Matt's put together over the years for planning the week ahead to get maximum productivity out of your life and out of your training. And I'm going to be chatting with Matt today and asking him a lot of questions about the specifics of that, because I think it's a really, really useful tool. And I'm actually curious to see what I can learn from that as well. So with that introduction, hello, Matt.
Hey, Andy. Thank you for calling me an oracle. Very, very complimentary.
It was. I don't like the word guru. That's overused.
No, I think
when you're talking levels, you've got gurus. There's 10 a penny, but there's only a few oracles.
So there's only a few oracles. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Cool. So, Matt, we're talking about this kind of Sunday Special, as you call it, the planning for the week. And it really caught my attention because as an athlete, I don't think I was very good at doing that. I think, like a lot of athletes, I focused on, I guess, what I would describe as like the macro of the training program, like looking at it as a whole beautifully oiled like unit, everything planned out weeks ahead and weeks in advance. And then it was just like boxes to tick as I rolled through it. And I certainly didn't take the time quite often to pause and adjust and deal with it. But before we get into the details of this, like what I want to know is why and how did you come up with this emphasizing this idea?
Yeah, I think it's funny. You said as an athlete, you were very good at the sort of the big macro planning, and then you'd plow through the weeds. And I think that's very normal for highly ambitious athletes. And I was exactly the same. I always sort of called myself a very loyal soldier. I had a great work ethic, and it was part of the reason that I trained myself into the ground in my own professional sport. And but the reason, and this was sort of iterative that we came up with this, but it was really to solve a challenge, to solve a problem, and take something that is incredibly complex, the planning and then the weekly and daily execution of that plan, and try and boil it down to something that's really accessible and very simple. And I think that for athletes, if we all know as coaches and as athletes that consistency is so key and consistency of effective training is really key, we have to come up with a structure, something that's hopefully really simple that everyone can understand and adhere to, that enables us to, on a weekly basis, pause and come up a level and just have almost a point of reflection. And that's why we sort of do it towards the start of the week. So as we look at our landscape ahead, and we do two things in the Sunday Special. The first is obviously have a little bit of reflection. How am I feeling? How did my last week go? And how did that tie to the plan? But the origins of this was with our professional athletes to look forward and look at the week ahead that was prescribed and say, what are the really important sessions in that plan of training coming ahead? When do I need to be primed to executing to my full degree to move the performance needle? And start to block out the week of that. And then as we started to use it with our professionals, we realized that it had even more application to our very busy and time-starved athletes, whether it was executives, CEOs, or just lifestyle enthusiasts, really serious amateurs, that could look at their training program but align it with all of the other components of life, family, work, etc. And it just became a tool. It became a sort of a series of levers to use to help planning and then execution as intended, really.
Yeah, and what I loved about it was the very clear way in which you describe, differentiating between key sessions in the week and supporting sessions in the week. So again, reflecting back on my own experiences as an athlete, as we often do, the thing I was always quite bad at was, well, probably two things in this space. One was trying to cram too many key sessions into a week, because as a triathlete, which involves the three sports, I felt like I needed to be moving forward my swimming, my cycling, and my running. So I needed key sessions, at least one, maybe two key sessions of each of those sports within a week. And it doesn't take a maths whiz to work out that, you do that's 6 sessions in 7 days, which is supposed to be key. Then the other side to it that I always found, I think, challenging was that I would probably push harder in easy sessions because I wanted to get more value out of them, and maybe that would prevent me from going really hard in the really hard or the really key sessions. And can you talk about that key and supporting session philosophy?
Yeah, it's funny, Andy. I think that as I go into this, there's something that you said there that's really important, which is the unfortunate belief that coaches have and athletes have that you have to do everything in every week. And society is structured around 7 days, but the body isn't. And so we don't have to hit everything in every week. And I think that's a great mistake, particularly of multi-sport athletes, that they try and throw into everything. And then the second thing that you mentioned there that is a tendency for athletes is that when they think about a training program, it just looks like casserole. There's all maybe potentially really good ingredients in there, but it's all thrown in, and it's very hard to differentiate the real purpose behind the workout. And so the Sunday special, again, very, very simple. There's nothing revolutionary about it, but the Sunday special is really a tool for the athlete to do two things. Number one, identify the sessions in the week that are really prescribed and designed to move the performance needle, and they are typically more challenging. And then also adhere to the program as intended, as it is prescribed, to actually execute as the prescription was intended. And another key mistake, probably the number one mistake that I see endurance athletes make, which you just identified yourself as being one of them, I was certainly one of them, was to bring the bottom up, go too hard in the easy sessions. And a much of that is a confidence thing and an ambition thing. And I think that we can have confidence to go easy if we understand the purpose. And so your question is, how many key sessions can you hit in a week? I think that if you look at elite athletes and then start to come down from there, it's probably only twice in a week that you can really hit the hammer. Now, that doesn't mean that you've only got 2 days of valuable training, but you've got 2 days that are the ones that are really suppressing the system to facilitate growth. And so a key session is identified as something that is really looking to drive the performance needle, and it's very, very important. You can also identify a key session that is maybe less suppressive, but still important as the value of training. So quite often we'll have a very hard interval day followed by a very low stress but over distance day for resilience. And I could identify both of those as key, and the athlete has a little bit of leverage on when they can be executed. The important part is what's the value or purpose of the supporting sessions, because those are the things that have a little bit more ebb and flow on how they get executed or even whether they get executed for very busy people. So a supporting session is one that's designed for recovery, potentially, from a key session to help prepare for an upcoming key session. Could be technical in nature, so working on technique skills or whatever it might be, or general conditioning. So if you get a box from Amazon, it's all of the pack filler. It's important, it protects the key sessions, but it's just the pack filler. And then I just made that up on the spot, by the way. I've never used that before. So there it is, but I will use it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So it's the pack filler. It has purpose, it's real value. But what an athlete wants to do, whether it's chasing world-class performance or trying to integrate their endurance sport and hobby into their very busy, time-starved life, is to ensure that over the course of weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and ultimately months of training, they can execute the key sessions as well as they possibly can. And those are the ones that are the most critical. And you can have a few in a week, but probably no more than 2 to 3 days at the very most, but probably 2 days that are hard.
Yeah.
And then in support, what you suddenly have, and it's very similar to the way that Precision talks about isolating electrolytes, hydration, and calories, so the actual fluid, is that you have more levers to pull. If we look at 10 sessions in a week that an athlete might do, if we now can bubble up 3 or 4 that are the really important ones, we now have levers with the supporting of whether to reduce the intensity even more, to eliminate, or to shorten if needed, so that they can maintain consistency. And that's a really key point.
That's fascinating, because I think my preconception and a lot of people's preconception would be that two to 3, but 2 being the key. It doesn't sound like a lot of key work during a week, but I'm guessing that to frame the next question around that, if you're doing 2 key sessions in a week as part of that Sunday ritual, the Sunday special, are we basically prioritizing, kind of going, right, these 2 sessions are the ones that are going to get, I need to go into them with the right mindset, with the right physical attributes to smack them hard, so everything else is then becomes a secondary issue. I get those factored in first, and then I build the rest of the week around them. Is that how you see it?
I think there's a couple of important points of clarification, you might say. The first is that just because you're identifying a key session, it doesn't mean you only have to do those 2 key sessions and you're going to become a great athlete. Of course not. It's just the ones that rise and become the kings of the week, if you want to call it that. And aligned with that, it doesn't mean that there isn't critical value in the supporting training. Really, what it is a mindset thing. And but I'll give you a really practical example. And this is particularly the case for amateur athletes. You're really busy, and you look and you have planned on a Wednesday a very hard bike workout, of which you're then deciding to run off the bike and having an intervals, and it's clearly a key session. But on Wednesday afternoon, you've got to do a presentation at work, and that all Tuesday you're going to be preparing for it. You might have compromised sleep, and you've got to get up on Wednesday morning. Not only have you got an afternoon presentation, but you've got to take your kid to the dentist, but you're going to squeeze it in at lunchtime. Is that really the day that's going to be high value that you can expect to get the most out of that session? Or is it better to shift that to a different day of the week? You can get a good night's sleep before, and you can evolve. And on the Wednesday, you can actually have something that's more supportive, that can energize and can help promote good performance in the upcoming session. It's obviously a little bit of an extreme example, but I think that what the Sunday special enables people to do is to look at the plan differently. We have a saying at Purple Patch that life is not a spreadsheet. So you can plan the training, but then it's the execution within the reality of what happens with your life and how you're feeling that comes to actually best performance. Versus many athletes, when they're stuck in the weeds, check, and are completely oblivious to accumulating fatigue, very poor sleep, etc. And they end up training hard, but not effectively. And I think it's, interestingly, the one thing that I've never had, and having the label of being the recovery coach or only 2 key sessions in a week type thing, and people look at it and say, well, how can they be doing enough? But I've never had an athlete say the training is too easy or can we do more? It's about leveraging the effectiveness. And when we're on, and it's very challenging. But I want you as an athlete to be equipped emotionally and physically to execute in that session and then recover with very, very easy training and then go again. And over the course of the weeks, that's where confidence comes, that's where energy comes, and ultimately performance comes.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And it makes me think back to some of my own experiences. And I really did have some wonderful coaching over the years. But one of the areas that I've always wondered about was, I didn't always feel I understood as an athlete where I had to show what I could do or extend myself to make these sessions key versus whether the coaches were looking for that were they looking for a high level of performance at all times. And certainly training in a squad environment, and you'll have known this as a swimmer because swimming is all built around squad environments, unless you're the top dog or one of the top 2 or 3, there's always a challenge there. So you can definitely be asked to raise your level at all times. And I think, I guess that leads on to another question with your group of pro athletes and elite age groupers that you work with. A lot of them will spend, I guess, a good proportion of time training alone, but you bring them together for training camps and for squad sessions and that kind of thing. How do you manage that kind of interaction, say when they get together on a training camp and you've got to be disciplined about people not beating each other up and stuff? How do you as a coach, instill that into people?
So I think whether it's individual, whether it's a group, I believe in empowerment of the athlete. And what I mean by that is you cannot be an effective athlete under purple patch unless you understand what you're doing and why. And similar to your experience, I was really good at working hard, and I was really good at being competitive in a group environment, and absolutely train myself into the ground because of it. And I think we have a lot of athletes that are walking around really fit and fatigued. And so it starts with developing the culture of education and empowerment. The athlete has a responsibility to learn and understand what they're looking to achieve. And then within a group environment, a squad environment, over the course of time, if you've got the younger athletes that are coming in to the more senior and established athletes, always having the senior athletes be a point of leadership, of education and culture creators. So rather than creating a culture where the young athletes have to prove themselves and keep up, actually putting them in a position of mentorship and being really open and accessible to enabling the athletes to do what is necessary for them. And so we put caps, sort of both physiological caps. We do not want you to go above this, but really we put purpose behind every session and spend as much time on a training camp educating as we do battering them many times. I do think that globally, every person, this is in any walk of life, every person thrives if they can set themselves up where they have a great network of peer-to-peer support where we can share ideas, etc. There also is an element of mentorship and then the opportunity to mentor others. And that those 3 things combined end up, as an individual, you end up growing and improving. So even within our pro squad, we do the same thing. And we've got an age grouper that wants to be pro that maybe we've invited. I'll bring Chelsea Sodaro to come in to mentor that person. At the same time, when Chelsea, who's obviously a precision athlete and 4th in the world last year, but when she joined Purple Patch 18 months ago, the first thing that I did was align Sarah Piampiano, who's been with me for 10 years, and had Sarah be a mentor to her. This is how we train. And that's how you can culturally continue this on an ongoing basis and adhere to the principles. It's not for everyone, of course. Purple Patch on is not for everyone.
No, but it is an interesting and sounds like a great way to approach what is obviously traditionally a fully individual environment to give people that kind of big brother, big sister figure to bring them along. Because otherwise, I certainly found as a youngster that it was the squad. A lot of the squads that I've involved in, while they weren't overtly aggressive, they were the school of hard knocks. You had to kind of you had to assert yourself, or you had to find your place in the pecking order, basically, and that's works quite well for weeding out the resilient top. There's quite often a couple of people who emerge really well out of that, but as a whole, it's not necessarily as helpful.
Yeah, I think that my job as a coach is to absolutely challenge people physically and mentally, but a second part of it then is to enable that to actually result in growth, performance growth. I have to set the conditions and the culture for them to go and execute as intended. And then it's my job and the athlete's job to hold to account. And so it's not all softy and lovey-dovey and it's, we can go easy. This is a really challenging thing, but that doesn't mean that it just has to be school of hard knocks and only the strong will survive. There's an intrinsic motivation, and then put them in an environment that they can maximize the potential. And you can do that in a collaborative way. And I think that's where we have one of the reasons that we've had longevity of so many athletes and careers rather than years. Another thing I just made up on the spot, but that's a thing that I'm really, really proud of. The Jesse Thomases and the Sarah Pianos that are with us for 10 years, because they've sort of lived in a system that I think has nurtured that.
Yeah, it's not all about short-term gains. Just flipping that around, because I think a lot of people who may be watching this might not yet be at the phase, or might not be in an environment where they can tap into squads or training and coaching. To close this up, practical advice for self-coached athletes in terms of how they can hold themselves accountable to this kind of Sunday special, key sessions, supported sessions and week planning. How would you advise they self-police that?
It's a great question, really important, because you do not have to be even an athlete to make use of this. You can just be kind of like me now, a fitness enthusiast. But I think the first thing is, this is a habit. It's not some great system. It's you complete freedom. You can do it with a piece of paper. There's no defined structure and pass fail. The most important thing is, and we like athletes to do it on a Sunday, is to just take 15 to 30 minutes at most with whatever works for you, to look at your week ahead and to actually pause and say, okay, let's really look at my landscape. And the first thing to do is to begin with life. So rather than the tendency is to have your training and then think, I've got this big bulb of training, how am I going to cram that into the box of life? And so people do everything they can, and they compromise sleep, they compromise social time, etc., and it ends up creating stress. Yeah. So instead, we want to integrate into life. And in order for that to be successful, we have to have a clear picture of what we have. So we look at in the Sunday special, you look ahead at the non-negotiables, my work, commute if you have it, but kids, dentists, social obligations, and you map those out, because those are the things that are really important. And for all of us, they are important, our work and performance and readiness for that, our family and friends and social components. And once we have those, the second thing is not even training. The second thing is, okay, let's also plot out my downtime, my sleep, a little bit of time for myself, and make sure that is there. And then what you have once you've gone through that is, here are my really busy days, here are my less busy days. This is what the landscape of the week is like, and it's a normal week, or it's a less busy week, or it's a really busy week. And it's only then that you can start then plugging in. Where shall I do the key sessions, separating them apart a little bit so that you can allow some rejuvenation between? And then where shall I put in the supporting, and how many of those are appropriate this week? And it creates this real opportunity for ebb and flow. If you've got a really busy week, your training hours might go down that week. If you've got a bit more, they might go up. But over the course of the weeks, it's all going to average out, and you're going to create this magical word called sustainability. And sustainability creates resilience.
I love that, Matt, because I think that is hitting the nail on the head. It's turning the picture completely upside down. It's what's real, what can I really achieve, and then flowing it out so that not just to be real, but so that you can roll it out week after week after week after week. Because the one thing that I wish someone had told me when I was a lot younger is that it's not about smashing out a few good sessions here and there. It is about building it slowly, one brick at a time, just chipping away. And the only way you can do that is with a healthy dose of reality, because I'm pretty sure, and a lot of athletes will be sitting there going, a bit of an aha moment around that, because they'll put the training in first and then figure out, I've got to get up at 5 tomorrow to get that session in, and that session I'll have to do at 9 o'clock at night on the turbo trainer or whatever. And I think if people can take that away, that alone, then that's incredibly helpful. So
we're not trying to create a second job. We're already busy enough. Our passion, our hobby, this sport is a critical element to make life bigger, but it shouldn't be a second job. And I think that's really important. My one very quick story I'll tell you is a few months ago, I was doing a presentation to a reasonably large group, probably 250 people, that were triathletes down in San Diego. And I asked the first question, I said, how many hours do you think you have to train each week to get ready for a half-Ironman or an Ironman? And around the room, the guesses of the hours came up. The average was about 20 hours a week. And these are all amateurs. And I said, well, how many of you guys in this room honestly have 20 hours a week to train? And no one put their hand up. And that's the truth. Don't be shackled by what you think is necessary, because it's not. And the average training hours on a weekly basis of our amateur athletes at Purple Patch is somewhere between, for half Ironman and Ironman, is somewhere between 9 and 14 hours. Very, very rarely would you go above that. That's our average. Somewhere around 11 is our average hours per week. Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's all right.
Yeah, exactly. It's really good. I mean, I've actually, written about that in a non-technical way myself in the past, with constraints of my own lifestyle. And when I started actually having the honesty policy of logging all my training and looking at what I was actually getting in, it was 5 to 7 hours a week for a lot of the recent years of my life. But I've managed to race a little bit, sustain a level of fitness I'm happy with, and all the rest of it. And I think if you'd have told me that number and said that I would be able to have done some of the things that I've done in the last few years off that level of training, I'd have laughed in your face. But the reality check of analysing it, and then the next step is okay, well, again, turn that around, plan it like that. So, because I think I would have felt a bit disheartened to plan a week and go, well, I've only got 4.5 hours of training in that week. But that happens so often when I was on the road, and so regularly, that you just go, well, all right, well, I'm doing okay with that, so let's not worry too much.
And the other thing that I think is the most important thing is you're doing okay and you're performing in other aspects of life. And we don't want anyone to perform in their endurance sport at the compromise of your health or how you're showing up to your family and friends, or of course performing in the workplace. And that it's really that work-life fit that we're looking for, not balance, but always managing. So to finish it, the Sunday Special is a tool to help you manage your work-life fit in many ways. Perfect.
Living up to your Oracle status, or your Oracle belief.
I don't know about that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that, Matt. We'll post up some information around this one, links of how people can find you, go online and read some of your stuff. I would encourage anyone who's enjoyed listening to Matt talk there. Purple Patch has a phenomenal podcast. We'll put a link to that in there. That's well worth tapping into for more nuggets of advice. So thanks again, Matt. Sorry to get you up early in the morning, but as an ex-swimmer, I thought you wouldn't mind that too much. And
always up early, Captain. Yeah. Always up. Good stuff.
Talk to you again soon.
Take care, mate.
Bye-bye. Bye.